Hello and welcome to Creator Weekly Live for January 21st, 2024. I'm Peggy Kay, and today I've got some updates for YouTubers, for website owners, and others interested in search engine optimization, some Gmail changes that could affect delivery of your email newsletter, and more. So welcome. If you're here live, I'd love to hear what you think about this week's updates in the chat, or just stop in and say hi. If you're watching this recording, please leave a comment. Also, as always, I share all the links and updates that I'm talking about today, plus more that I don't have time to get to in my newsletter and on my blog. There are links in the description of the video. First, I'll say a big welcome to everyone who's currently in the live chat. Hi, I see John and Craig and Paul and Andrew. Welcome today. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. And if I don't mention a particular update that you've been thinking about, drop a comment in the chat, and it may be something I missed. There's lots of things I missed, I'm sure. So let's get started. The first thing I wanted to mention is an update from YouTube talking about A/B testing of thumbnails. Now, what is this? This is going to be a built-in way to have multiple thumbnails basically running at the same time. So YouTube will run a test simultaneously showing different thumbnails, and then it will tell you which thumbnail actually got the better click-through rate. Or actually, the metric they're looking at is the amount of watch time from people who clicked on a particular thumbnail. And I think this will be really interesting and useful if you're trying to increase the number of people watching your videos. Of course, the big question is, when will I get it? And there was an update in this week's post from Rich Ritchie, the creator liaison. And he says, basically, right now, the feature is still in testing. The A/B thumbnail testing is up to about 50,000 channels of various types, sizes, and regions across YouTube, which is a small fraction of the total number of YouTube channels, of course. And he says that will continue until the team feels like the product is delivering what it needs to for creators, and then it will start moving into launch mode. There's no timeline yet. So if you are looking forward to trying A/B thumbnail testing, it is coming, but there's no specific timeline for that yet. And the other YouTube update I wanted to mention is that on their blog, they have 6 ways to grow your YouTube channel in 2024. This is probably not big news if you use YouTube a lot, but there's a bunch of tips for how to improve viewers on your channel and things to try. So that is definitely worth looking up. I won't go through those because it's only so much time. The big change I wanted to talk about, though, is Google announced updates on their preparations for the DMA. And I think that most of you here live are actually in the US, but this is the new Digital Markets Act in the European Union, and it affects what they call gatekeepers, and these are the biggest platforms. So it affects Alphabet, Google, Microsoft, Amazon, uh, and I'm forgetting a couple others. Oh, TikTok, of course. And there are new regulations that they need to be following as of March. And so Google has announced an update on their preparations. And you can read about it on their blog. There's also a lot of information in the Help Center. I think one of the biggest changes is that Google will allow people in Europe to unlink their services. And this is required under the law. So you can choose to unlink search, YouTube, Google's ad services, Google Play, Chrome, Google Shopping, and Google Maps. And they say when these services are linked, they can share data with each other and with all other Google services. So for example, linked Google services can work together to help determine what content and ads you see. So I think this is going to be very interesting because if people choose to unlink their services, things like their Google search won't affect their YouTube recommendations. So Google talks about that specifically. It says when search, YouTube, and Chrome are not linked services, your recommendations in search, like what to watch in your Discover feed, will be less personalized because it's not using the data from the other services you're using. Or, for example, if you unlink search and maps, reservations you made on search won't appear in Google Maps. So I think this is going to be a very interesting change. It's hard to know how it will affect how people use these services, how recommendations work, and so forth. Craig mentions cookies, keep you signed in to all those services. There's big changes happening to cookies, of course, too. Chrome is going to stop you loading third-party cookies by default. Safari and Firefox already do that. Sort of cookies are on their way out as a way of tracking you across sites and services. And how this is going to work, the unlinking, I don't know exactly. Google will still need to be able to detect you're signed into your Google account, but who knows? So I thought that was interesting. And if anyone's watching this from Europe, I'll be curious to hear how that actually works in practice. So the next thing I wanted to mention really briefly is that there are changes to Gmail that require senders to include certain information in the headers. It's not something you have to worry about unless you have your own email server. But what this change is allowing is, is for Gmail to make it easier to unsubscribe. If you have an email newsletter or otherwise send bulk emails from any service, you should be aware of this change. Now, some people are probably going to think, oh, it's not good. It's easier to unsubscribe. People will unsubscribe. But I actually think this is actually going to be good because Google says in Gmail, they're going to make it clearer that people can unsubscribe rather than just marking something as spam. And as they say, messages that people mark as spam often originate from legitimate senders, and marking them as spam can negatively impact the sender's email reputation and can potentially affect the deliverability of future emails. So they're changing the text of the buttons to make it clearer for users to choose between unsubscribing or reporting a message as spam. So I think this is a positive change if you're sending any kind of bulk email, because you're less likely to get it flagged as spam. People can just unsubscribe instead. So those are some of the big updates this week. I wanted to mention a bunch of other smaller things. It's interesting, there were fewer big platform updates this week. I felt like there were a bunch last week, maybe because people got back to work and launched a bunch of things. So I think we'll be seeing more as time goes on, because there are a lot of updates that are probably on the timeline for the first quarter, and the first quarter ends at the end of March. So we'll see more things as the months go on. But a few other small updates. Over on TikTok, one thing that they have done is make it easier for gamers to qualify to have their live studio. And they have a new gaming live access application that lets gaming live streamers submit the other platforms that they're already live streaming on as part of the application. And then TikTok will look and see what their following is on these other platforms. Think YouTube, think Twitch. I think they even list Kick and a couple other live streaming platforms. So the idea is that you can use your experience live streaming on other platforms to apply for the gaming live access on TikTok. The other update I wanted to talk about is on X. And if you're still using X, they have launched audio and video calls on Android. To make a call to someone, you have to be a subscriber. You have to be a paid subscriber, but anyone can be called. So if you use Android and you're on X, you should check your privacy settings, because you can determine who can call you. You can choose between, I think, people you follow, or you can allow anyone, which probably isn't the best choice. You can limit it to people who are subscribers and so forth. So again, check your settings on X. Despite all the talk of Elon Musk and X itself requiring a paid subscription to be verified, really has not stopped spammers from doing that and automated systems from doing that. So again, check your settings. And I am just double checking what else is new. Those were the big updates this week. I wanted to mention a couple other things that people are talking about. First is that there is a big to-do over on X where Mr. Beast directly uploaded a video to X rather than just sharing a video on YouTube. And Elon Musk is really super excited about this, and it's clearly a test. There's a lot of talk about whether the post with this video is being boosted or not. And I will say that I have actually seen the post with this video multiple times in my X for You feed. I don't follow Mr. Beast, and I blocked Elon Musk, and so it is kind of weird that I'm seeing it. It seems to be promoted as if it's an ad. And there's a lot of discussion on, is it really being boosted or is there something else going on? The explanation from X is that, oh, there's a pre-roll ad on it and all videos with the pre-roll ad are being boosted in the For You feed. That seems kind of weird and annoying. It's not clear what's happening. It will be interesting what this experiment is, because whether you're a fan of Mr. Beast or not, one of his big things is that he's extremely data-driven. He, looks at all the analytics, looks at all the stats, everything is optimized. So this will be an interesting test, keeping in mind that because Elon Musk is so invested personally in having this be a success, it might not be the most accurate data. The other kind of neat thing I wanted to talk about is Flickr Commons. Now, this is something that you may not necessarily know about, but Flickr, which has been around a long time, has a program where they help and encourage organizations like libraries, historical societies, government organizations, all these things, to upload their historical photos to the platform. These are now, I think, managed by a nonprofit, but Flickr Commons is 16 years old, which is pretty incredible in internet years. And I thought it was pretty neat that they have whoops. They have a Explore tab. You can see some of their best ones. I didn't have the right page open, but if you go to the Explore page specifically for January 15th, it has highlights from historical photos that are uploaded. There's a lot of great ones. And I'll mention that my favorite photo of those is this picture from Florida Memory of journalist Lucy Morgan, who has her old school video camera and phone. Let me just make that a bit bigger. So that's what it meant to be a journalist in the old days and take video. You had probably 25 pounds worth of camera and a giant phone. Anyway, I like looking at historical photos, and all of them are uploaded with the license, no known copyright restrictions. You may be wondering, well, what does that mean exactly? And I guess the tricky thing is with historical photos, it's very difficult to determine who might have the copyright. So for a lot of these, the organization that uploaded it made a good faith effort to try and determine if there's still copyright restrictions. And if they don't find any, then they can say no known copyright restrictions, but in theory, there still could be copyright restrictions, if that makes sense. If you're interested in historical photos, you should definitely check it out. Craig says, I think ads are spam. Well, ads are what pay for the content you're looking at. There's subscriptions too, but really overall, advertising supports creators, it supports journalism. So maybe be a little open-minded about that if you can. And the other thing I really wanted to mention this week is a sort of, what should I say, internet person beware. So over on Reddit, there's a whole bunch of specific Reddit subreddits, every topic you can think about. One of the subreddits is for SEO, search engine optimization. And there is some concern and discussion because the big SEO subreddit, the person who created it, the one who was managing it, he was offline for a couple weeks. And that allowed someone else to claim ownership of the subreddit. And I guess that's within Reddit policy. And there's concern that the new team that's managing it all seem to be, the pejorative term would be crypto bros, but they're all into NFTs and cryptocurrency, and it's not quite clear what their motivation is in taking over this subreddit. And currently there's some flack between the members and the new moderators. Malte Landwehr, I hope I'm saying his name correctly, has been writing about this over on X. He says, the new mod team of our SEO just started threatening users, including lawsuits. Why doesn't Reddit care about this? Because this is a top 1% subreddit in terms of members. Sounds like a sucky situation if you are a member of this subreddit. And I think, again, it's pointing to a big problem with most platforms on the internet, that if you're not actually controlling the details yourself, changes can be made without your permission. This is pretty extreme, someone new taking over, because life happens. I think the other thing it's pointing to is if you have a community online, whatever platform you're using, you should not be the only person managing it. Make sure to designate other people, because there's going to be times when you can't actually take care of things yourself. So you should definitely give other people power, people who you trust, so that you don't lose control if you get sick or other things happen. So those are my big updates for this week. I hope you found them interesting. And again, you can link to my blog post or subscribe to my newsletter, get all the links and tips in your inbox every week. And you can find those for more information. Thank you so much for joining me live today. I hope I see you next week.